Hey there, folks. The Scottsdale Travel Chick's sidekick here to present to you our ultimate visitor guide to Quito, Ecuador. In this video, we'll cover all the top sites you want to see and do in and around Quito, along with details on how to get around, where to stay, the best times to visit, the best day trips, and even some dining and nightlife tips as well. Okay, let's go. First up, just a bit of background on Quito and Ecuador. Ecuador is a small South American country sandwiched between Peru to the south and Colombia to the north. It might be most famous for those Galapagos Islands, but there's plenty to like beyond that, and the capital city of Quito is one. Quito is unique and inviting in many ways. It sits very close to the equator, yet has very pleasant weather year-round, thanks to its incredible 9,400 foot or almost 2,900 meter elevation. The city stretches out across a mountain valley with a metro population of almost 2 million people. And impressively, it's surrounded by even higher mountains and active volcanoes. Beyond these mountains and volcanoes to the east, you'll descend into the Amazon River Basin, and to the west, the Pacific Ocean. You may likely need a day or two to acclimate to the high elevation, but the historic center of Quito is a wonderful place to explore. It has one of the largest and best preserved historical centers in the Americas, and for this reason, it was one of the very first UNESCO World Heritage Cultural Sites to be established in 1978. The city is divided into basically two distinct areas. There is that historical Old Town area centered around Plaza Grande, and then there's the rest of the city, which is newer, more modern, and typically referred to simply as the New Town. The historical area is a delightful jumble of narrow streets and wide cobblestone plazas lined with churches, monasteries, mansions, and colorful balconied houses. Everything in this area can be explored by foot, and you'll find local city dwellers along with indigenous people selling their wares. The New Town area feels much more modern and, I must say, bland, with its concentration of banks, shops, hotels, and tour operators. But there's still a few sites worth checking out in this area as well. And finally, fun fact, and quite important here too, is that Ecuador uses the US dollar as its primary currency. You'll likely get small change back in their local centavo coins, but the US dollar works everywhere and anywhere, so no need to change your money. That's pretty cool. How to get there and how to get around. You'll most likely arrive at the Mariscal Sucre International Airport, which is about 28 miles or 45 kilometers northeast of the Old Town. The drive from the airport into town should take you just under 1 hour by taxi or Uber, and the cost should be about $25, depending on the time of day and traffic. Once you've arrived at your hotel, getting around is easy and very inexpensive. Quito does have a bus system, as well as one subway line and a bike share program, but to be honest, they're not that easy to use for visitors, so just stick with taxis or preferably Uber. Uber is super cheap, plentiful, and will take you anywhere you need to go, and fares to anywhere around the downtown will cost you no more than about $5 one way. The best times to visit. Quito weather is consistent but surprisingly brisk all year round. And although it's very near the equator, Quito's high elevation keeps the temperatures feeling very spring-like all the time, with nights in the 50s and daytime temperatures in the 60s Fahrenheit. So, bring a light jacket and you'll be all set. In terms of the ideal times to visit, that would be the dry season, from mid-June to about mid-September, when warm, sunny skies tend to prevail. the months of October through February experience a bit more rain, but this typically comes only as short afternoon showers, so these months should be good as well. However, the period from March through May does get more rain, so you might want to avoid this time if that's a choice for you. Where to stay? Okay, let's now talk a little bit about where to stay. The majority of all Quito visitors stay in the Newtown area around La Mariscal. In this area, you'll find a large selection of accommodations in all price ranges, and it's a good area as it's about halfway between the Old Town to the south and the Carolina Park area to the north. The only other area to consider for most foreigners is directly in the Old Town area, and here you'll have choices among smaller boutique hotels, some very nice, but it should be noted there are no large international brands in this area. Let me now just say a little bit about safety in this section as well. I normally don't include this in most of our visitor guides, but I probably should for Quito, as you've likely seen some recent news or maybe read some foreign comments speaking about safety, not walking alone, and staying out of certain areas of town. All this is probably well noted. However, our personal experience was that we didn't experience any issues walking anywhere around the Old Town or the La Mariscal areas, and we even made the 30-minute walk between them and never felt concerned. Also, good or bad, we took particular note of many police and security people keeping an eye on things. So, I wouldn't be too concerned if you're staying in the busy areas with many people around. Just keep an eye out for pickpockets as you would anywhere else, and if you ever feel uncomfortable or not safe, just go inside somewhere and call an Uber, as this is always the safest way to get around Quito as a tourist. What to see and do. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's get to the top things to see and do in and around Quito, Ecuador. I'll group them all into 3 areas: the Old Town, the rest of Quito, and the best day trips nearby. First up is by far the most popular part of Quito, its UNESCO World Heritage Old Town. This historic district is recognized as having the best preserved, least altered historical center in all of Latin America, and it's this accolade that led Quito to become one of the very first cities in the world to be declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site way back in 1978. This area is centered around Plaza Grande, and we recommend starting here and simply walking around all the various streets nearby. In very close proximity, you'll find all the following and much, much more. San Agustin Church and Convent, portions of which go back to the 1500s. The Metropolitan Cathedral, a 16th century domed church with neoclassical architecture and 4 colorful dramatic chapels. Our Lady of Mercy Bascilica, or La Merced, with its important library and 5 domes. The Garcia Moreno Street, which is a pedestrian-only street worth exploring with a half-dozen notable sites along its short length. Plaza San Francisco, which is an equally popular square as Plaza Grande. The City Museum, housed in a 1565 hospital and features exhibits about Quito's history. The Society of Jesus Church. This is our personal favorite for its impressive golden interior. And the Presidential Palace, which encompasses one side of the Plaza Grande, and it's the country's seat of government. Okay, and we're still on Plaza Grande. This is the Presidential Palace. I just went through these sites quickly, but each is worth a stop, and there's a lot more to see and do here too. So, like I said, just walk around and explore. And a fun fact, there are more than 40 churches and museums in this small area. Still within the old town, but maybe a 10 to 15 minute walk or short Uber ride away, are the Central Market or Mercado Central. Here you'll find a multi-story food market where you'll see locals buying their meat and vegetables for dinner that evening, and you'll have various traditional shops to try a meal or a unique drink. And they're all very cheap here too. Famous La Ronda Street. It's a short, pedestrian-only street lined on either side with small historical buildings. Back in the day, this was a popular place for artists and musicians to live. Now, it's simply a tourist street with numerous restaurants and small shops to check out. Finally, in the Old Town area, there's the impressive Bascilica del Voto Nacional, or simply the National Basilica or National Cathedral. There are many churches and basilicas to see all around Quito, but if you see only one, you have to make it this one, and you can't miss it. It's the tallest church in Ecuador with two imposing 380-foot towers plainly visible throughout the city. Built in flamboyant neo-Gothic style, it's a unique mix of arches, spires, gables, and stained glass windows. And, pro tip, be sure to closely examine the church's gargoyles and see if you can find anything fishy. You might find monkeys, jaguars, or even alligators. But it's not just about the basilica's impressive size and beauty. The coolest part of this national basilica is that you can climb up through the very highest portions of the towers and spires. It's certainly not for the faint of heart, but you really shouldn't miss this activity if you decide to visit. If you want to learn more about this church, how to explore the building, and find the secret climbing areas, check out our dedicated video on it. Just search Basilica do Voto Cathedral, Quito. Lastly, I'll leave you with one great pro tip here. Consider a free Quito walking tour. There are 2 tours departing each day at 10:30 and 2:30 p.m., and all you pay is your tip. Check out their website for more details. Now, let's get to the other top things to see and do in Quito, which are not in the Old Town. But before I do, just a quick shout out here that if you're enjoying this video, please give us a thumbs up and maybe a comment too, or better yet, forward it to one of your friends. And please consider subscribing to our channel to receive more fun, informative travel videos just like this one. Okay, now back to those other Quito sites outside the Old Town. I'll start with the very popular Virgin Mary viewpoint, or El Panaceo viewpoint. In a city surrounded by mountains with great viewpoints, this is Quito's most famous, and it pops up right in the middle of town. In addition to the views, it's capped by what is believed to be the largest winged statue of the Virgin Mary in the world. Next up is the National Museum of Ecuador. It's the nation's premier museum and houses an impressive collection of pre-Columbian artifacts, as well as colonial, Republican, and contemporary art. Moving further north is Carolina Park. It's a 165-acre park right in the middle of town, and it's Quito's version of New York's Central Park. Here you'll find botanical gardens, an artificial river where you can rent paddle boats, and plenty of food vendors where you can try out some Ecuadorian street food. It's best experienced on weekends when all of Quito comes here to enjoy some outdoor fun. Heading up one of the hills on the eastern edge of town is Ichimbia Park and Viewpoint and the Quito tourist sign. It's probably best to take an Uber here, but once you're there, you can experience a sizable park Quito's Crystal Palace, which was shipped from Germany more than 100 years ago, and the famous Quito sign. Finally, on the western edge of Quito is one of the most popular attractions in all of Ecuador, the Teleferico cable car. It's an impressive ski lift gondola which whisks you up the side of a dormant volcano to an elevation of almost 13,000 feet, one of the highest ski lift elevations in the world. The journey takes about 20 minutes, and from the top you'll have a series of indoor and outdoor viewpoints out over the city. In addition, there are also many hiking trails, a couple of cafes to grab a bite, a church, a tourist swing, and a chance to grab a picture with llamas. Last but not least, I'll leave you with 2 interesting pro tips here. Number 1, on Sundays, there's a free bike ride at 8 a.m. where they close down 30 kilometers of city streets so that bikers can enjoy all by themselves. You will have to rent your own bike though. And the second pro tip here is that every Monday at 11 a.m., there's a big changing of the guard ceremony at the Presidential Palace down on Plaza Grande. Come to see Ecuador's president make an appearance and to get your chance to tour the equivalent of what is Ecuador's White House. Now, we get to the third section of top things to see and do, the best day trips from Quito. For those who enjoy adventure activities, there's no shortage of options to consider within a couple of hours of Quito. In fact, Quito is an excellent hub to organize tons of excursions, whether it be day trips like these or multi-day trips to the Amazon or the Galapagos, or even into Peru. In terms of what to choose for day trips, I'd recommend checking with some local tour providers or simply visiting viator.com, but I'll give you here the top 3 choices I think are the best, and I'll suggest one to avoid as well. First up, number 1, go hike a volcano. You can hike the active volcano of Cotopaxi and incorporate other sites in the same day trip. Cotopaxi is a don't-miss option as it's one of the tallest active volcanoes in the world and the second highest point in Ecuador with a summit of almost 6,000 meters or 3.6 miles high. There are many day trip options for Cotopaxi, with one even including a bike ride back down from the base camp. Number 2, explore the Mendo Rainforest. Here you can hike, canyoneer, zip line, rappel down waterfalls, river tube, and more. And this rainforest has one of the highest concentrations of biodiversity anywhere on the planet. And number 3, visit Banos, Quito's adventure capital. Here there are hot springs, ATV tours, zip lines, some of the best waterfalls in all of Ecuador, and more. It's a popular base for overnight trips, but it's also possible to get a taste for things just with a day trip. And again, check out Viator or local tour companies for more details of what's on order for day trips. Finally, one day trip to avoid, visiting the Equator Line. Often they call this the middle of the world tours. There are actually 2 locations very close to each other which they choose from, and both are very touristy and full of bus tours. If you absolutely must get your picture taken on the Equator Line, or at least close to it, then I guess you'll have to do one of these. But be prepared for crowds and a boring experience. Now, let's touch briefly on dining and nightlife in Quito. I'll start with dining, and my first comment is to try to eat local. And when you do, you'll quickly realize dining is really cheap in Ecuador. I don't have particular recommendations here, but picking something around the Old Town area, the La Mariscala area, or along that La Ronda pedestrian street are all good ideas to find something interesting. And a little pro tip here, I guess, there are quite a few dining options inside the courtyards of old Spanish buildings in the Old Town. So keep your eye out and find a good one. Oh, and don't forget to try that guinea pig. So, what do you got there, Scottsdale Travel Chick?
This is a roasted guinea pig, but this is not my dinner.
Yeah,
I did not order this.
Don't lie to us.
No, I did not.
You begged and pleaded for guinea pig.
Order guinea pig.
This is like the national dish of Ecuador, so
I know, but I did not.
so you're going to come to Ecuador and not try their national dish.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Canva's gonna take it.
In terms of nightlife, there are various little pockets around town, but the only real choice for tourists is the Plaza Foch area of La Mariscal. From dance clubs to quiet bars to live music to restaurants of all varieties, you'll find it all here within 4 to 5 blocks in each direction of Plaza Foch. Things were pretty quiet when we walked around, but I understand things really get going later in the evening after 11 p.m. And bars are open till 3, and clubs go to 4 a.m. or even later. Well, there you have it, folks, our ultimate visitor guide to Quito, Ecuador. We hope you enjoyed. Did we miss any of your favorites, or do you have a secret tip you'd like to share? If so, please let us know in the comments section below, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more fun, informative travel videos just like this one.
Until next time, see you later.